Okay, going to work with a ring template here in Procreate. So, first time trying to do this, so see how it goes. It's going to be a large file coming in the template, I know that, so I'm going to set a custom size. That's not what I meant to do. Sorry. I don't want pixels, I want inches. And I want the width to be 8. I want the height to be 12. 300, that'll give me 58 layers, should I need them. There we go. Insert file. Now I have this in a couple of places. I have it here as a ring template that came in from my camera. And you'll see that that image is a lot smaller than this screen. So I don't trust it. Because the actual template is almost this size. So, in here, yes, that's a JPEG, and that is the actual size. So when you're working in Procreate, it's really important, if you're going to bring in a template, that you verify the size of the template externally. In this case, I used Photoshop. Or you can just keep making bigger and bigger canvases until your entire template or imported file, you can see the outline of it here, fits. Then you know it's not changing the scale or messing with the resolution. Okay, the point of this is to do a quick drawing of a ring design. So I'm going to get a new layer up, and I'm going to canvas drawing guide on, edit drawing guide, symmetry, and going to place this symmetry. As accurately as I reasonably can. Just like in Photoshop or Painter, there's always a little give and take as far as how accurate you can place that. That's done. I am going to make this a layer that the lines are on, the template. I'm going to make it less opaque, so I get a nice gray. I do not like working against a black line. My preferred drawing tool for today, at least. I'm going to go into sketching. And I'm going to go with the HB pencil, which right now is set to its maximum. I'm going to drop it down. And that looks to be a pretty good line weight for what I'm doing. And my eraser, the hard airbrush is nice because it's clean. But I'm going to also set it small so it doesn't destroy a lot of information when I'm working. Okay. So, the way this is set up, and you can see it at the bottom of the template where I labeled the components. This is my finger rest in here, and this is my under bezel. Okay. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to use those to create the head for my ring. This is my prong. Now, I'm getting a lot of texture in that line. I like the HB pencil because I like the feel of it, but I don't necessarily like having the grain. So I'm going to show you a little bit about adjusting that. You can come in here. I'm going to give it a little streamlining. That's brush stabilizing. And then I'm going to come over here, and there's going to be a grain slider. Okay. The scale of that grain right now is at 29%. I'm going to back it off to 10%. And that'll give me a little nicer stroke, okay? I would like this to be a little darker than it is, but this is fine. Now, the size of the prongs that I have provided in this template is frankly a little heavy. Now, because this is a transparent layer, I am not going to be able to erase in here. I would have to use a white pencil or come down onto here if I want to use my eraser. And then I can erase pretty effectively. Now I want to be careful because I don't really need this detail in here, but I don't really have a burning desire to annihilate it either. Just going to clean out anything in here that's in my way. Then I'll go back to my drawing layer. And get a nice looking prong, okay? I don't want to get too fine with my lines, honestly. Because when you zoom out, these will be so tiny. There's really no need. These are actually fine enough. Okay, and I don't want to belabor this too long. I can tell you from experience that this under bezel is going to bite in to this prong a little bit, as is the gallery, which is part of the finger rest on a ring. In fact, the main difference between a oh, by the way, this is an interesting thing to notice. You'll notice that it didn't apply this mirroring to the other layer. That's because in Procreate, in order to get this to work, I have to hit Drawing Assist for that layer. And then once I've done that, anything I do on one side will happen on the other. And I hadn't done that before. So, I was saying that, going back to my drawing layer, this is probably a little heavy for the prongs I have. Okay, but that's fine. The culet of this stone, by the way, would fall roughly here. This is the high head version versus the low head version, which is over here. For this high head version, it's so I can get more of a cathedral or swooping shoulder. You want this to come in and attach to the under bezel. Now in your template, as in this one, this is a dotted line. I made it a dotted line because I didn't want you to feel like you were a slave to it. Generally, your finger rest will start out a little narrow, a little thinner here, about 9/10, and then it will gain width as it swoops out this way. Your shoulder will come up and attach to the under bezel, and where it does, it'll be thinner than it is where it meets up with your finger rest. In a handmade ring, there's actually a notch here, but in a CAD ring, there's no reason. It's not a notch physically, it's actually where the two pieces would be soldered, and then it would be dressed out or polished where you couldn't see it. But since we are doing a CAD ring, we don't have to have any of that. Okay, I'm going to go back into the template layer and do some cleaning. And because I now have the assisted on, the mirroring symmetrical drawing is happening just the way I would expect it to. I am going to go ahead and erase out that shoulder template line. Don't want that. I don't want the midline here that's in the template either. Don't need that. It's nice to have when I'm doing more ambitious designs than this. Okay. But that is pretty much good for this portion. I am going to sweeten up, I am going to sweeten up this shoulder a little bit. More like that. That's a more attractive shoulder. Now the erase that I'm getting is giving me a very hard eraser, so I am going to change this. I'm going to change this to be the same eraser, same brush as the pencil. Once I do that, I'll have to bring it down in scale because it'll be set to whatever that was the last time I used it. And you'll see that now when it erases, it incorporates that fine grain of a pencil. So my erasers don't look so starkly different from my drawing. Okay? That's pretty good. Now, I will tell you that if I were doing this as a design for a client from a sales perspective, okay, not from a manufacturing, but from a sales perspective, I'm actually taking a look at this finger rest and I'm feeling like it's a little bit thin. So I'm going to come into it a little bit. Now, I'm getting some resistance from the layer underneath. I'm going to go ahead and erase that altogether so it doesn't argue with me anymore. I don't need the template anymore. Going to let that be a little bit thicker. And you'll notice when I'm talking about this, we're talking about the thickness of a pencil line. It's not a huge difference. It's a very subtle difference. And design in jewelry is about very subtle differences. the exact curvature of the prong. The boating, we call that, of the prong. Okay. What I was going to say is that if you were doing this for a client for sales, not for manufacturing, because for CAD modeling, I always make a 1.65 to 1.7 millimeter thickness here. But for presentation, you would actually want a shank. That felt more like that, okay? That's more elegant. But you're casting this. You're going to make a rhino model, then you're going to print it, then you're going to cast it. You're going to lose that thickness, especially if you do any production at all on it. So I keep these thicker than thin because it's easy enough to dress that out in metal if you want to make it thinner. And you can't add metal back. So this is one of my 3 views, okay? I'm going to work on my side view next. So I'm going to go to my wrench. I'm going to go edit drawing guide, and that will bring back that little bullseye that I need to grab with my finger and pull over. Now the nice thing about Procreate versus Photoshop with this tool is that in Photoshop, if you rotate your canvas, your symmetry will continue. It'll be hard to adjust it. You can do it, but it's harder to adjust. And your straight lines, if you're doing the straight line method and you hold Shift key and draw, they won't follow your rotated canvas very well either. Procreate is very forgiving with this sort of thing. Okay, so got it. So I want to create my side view. Going to go ahead and come into the assisted template with my eraser, and I'm going to lightly, very little pen pressure, erase some of these lines. Just to make it easier to see what I'm doing. Now I'll go into my drawing layer. And once again, draw my prongs. Now I'm not going to go crazy measuring them to make sure they're the same on the other side. For one thing, Procreate doesn't lend itself to that sort of behavior. It's not Rhino, but also because it's just not necessary. If I draw a prong that looks like it's right and that has the right kind of feel, I'm confident. Now, I think that I made too sharp of a taper in my template on this basket prong head. So I'm going to go ahead and let that bottom come out a little bit, like so. I will need to correct my front view to accommodate that decision as well. You don't have to, but it would be wise to. I'm going to have my under bezel once again bite into the prong a little bit here. And that's my prong head. Now for my shank. I would like to have a tapered shank. So I'm going to use Procreate's line tool where I can start from here. I can just draw and then I can hold on to it for a minute and it'll become a straight line. And then I can pull that in and out to get about the taper that I'm looking for. I would like this to, it's going to come up and join into the under bezel. I would like it to have a taper. Now, I could check this out with construction lines and all of that, and I certainly encourage you to do that. if you have the time and inclination, because you'll get a more accurate drawing. But I know from experience that most of this tapering inward will happen up high, up in this area. If I taper down here, it's going to be way down the side of the ring. And I want the tapering to be mostly up by the finger. I mean, mostly up by the head. I want this to have a depressed area, a recessed area. Something like that. And I would like it to last until about here, and then I want it to fade out. I want the bumps, or the raised area, to get fatter and fatter and fatter, while the recessed area becomes thinner and thinner and thinner. Okay? That's fine. I want the bottom of my shank and here's the challenge. Let's see what happens. I would like very much to have my grid be active. So, drawing guide, edit drawing guide. I would like there to be a 2D grid. And it will allow me to add that. That's very kind of them. I would like to change that grid size to inches, 0.15. Done. Done. Oh. Okay, try that again. Okay. It's because I touched this. It's still there. It just got turned to white, because when you hit done right here in the corner, if you are not careful, you will annihilate your... Now the bad news is that, yeah, I was afraid of that. Okay. You can't have symmetry and the grid at the same time. Unfortunate but true. So now if I leave this unassisted, when I try and draw, all I'll be able to do is 90-degree lines. But I do want the grid because it gives me some sense of where the bottom of this thing should be. So I'll go back and forth between the two. But I am going to turn off assisted on this. And I'm going to take a look, and I'm going to estimate how thick I think my shank is. And looking at the grid, I would say it's somewhere in there. Okay? This. Okay? And I'm going to use that to help me determine what the bottom of the shank is. But I am going to go back now and change my... mostly I did that to show you that you could get a grid. But I really vastly prefer to have symmetry on. And it was kind enough to remember where that was at. I would like a rounded shank. This guideline is no longer important. And all of these steps would work the same in Photoshop. This is, I'm working in Procreate because some of my students like it. I'm actually very fond of it myself. But anything you can do pretty much in one paint package, you can do in the others. Okay, I need to clean up my template. So, going to my template, and I'm going to erase. I would like a little larger eraser for that, so come over here and boost that up. Now, for my particular design, that center line wasn't important, but for some of yours, it might be. Okay? But I don't need any of it now. I want this to be clean. Okay. Not bad. Tidy up on the drawing layer a little bit. Okay. Now, because I don't see this as a hard line, I'm going to soften it. I want it to fade out at the bottom, so I will actually erase it almost all the way out. And I'll break it so that you can tell that it's not a hard creased line. So there is my front and side. That's a very delicate ring. Okay. Trying to decide if I think it's too delicate. No, I'll show you what to do if you do think it's too delicate. Selection. Freehand. I'm going to drag. Probably. Never mind. Hang on. I'm going to click. So click. Click. That was not too far. Click. Click. It's a polygon selection tool or a polyline selection tool. So you're going to get straight segments in between your click. Unfortunately, making selections is a vector thing. For those of you who know what that means, it's like in Rhino or Illustrator. So it doesn't listen to the symmetry drawing tool, which is strictly pixel based. Okay, so there I have it. I'm going to pick that up. Now, I actually have a dangerous situation right now because my canvas, if I try and move out like that, I'm going to lose it. So, yeah. Not good. I'm going to have to reselect. You want to make sure that everything you have that you want to work with is within the screen, because if you zoom out with your fingers, you're going to change your selection. You're going to distort things. And I'm actually very curious because, no, it's true. I had hoped that maybe this symmetry tool wasn't working because I didn't have assisted on the layer. Come on. Unfortunately, being zoomed out like this, having a hard time getting it to cooperate with me. All right. There we go. I do want to be fairly careful when I get up towards the top. Down at the bottom, it's not so important because I'm not interfering with the head section. Okay, so now I have this. Select on the transform tool. Right now it's set to uniform. I'm going to set it to freeform, and that will allow me to drag these side handles and change the width of that however I might like. Okay? Once I've done that, I'm going to reach to the outside of the selection and put it back in the center as it was. Okay? So having done that, I can go back to my brush and I can take a look. And that's a little more robust. And that's fine. Okay. So now I want to do my top view. The top view is going to become more of a challenge because I can't transfer the information easily. All right. I'm going to turn off my assist for a minute. I would like to pick this whole thing up and move it over. Okay. So now I've dragged a selection, kind of 3-finger swipe. Unfortunately, that's only going to copy that layer. I was hoping there was an option here to copy all the way through, and I actually know there is. I just can't remember what it is. Oh, right here. Copy all. Okay. Paste. That worked. So now I'm going to drag this up. And see, once again, I have that problem. I have to have my view ready, because if I change my view, it'll actually, using my fingertips is going to actually move that layer around, which I don't want it to do. So go back and pick it up again. Okay. I'm going to make this a multiply layer so I can see through it. Going to bring it up here. I'm just going to lay it on top so I can see my rotation better. That looks pretty good. Zoom in to verify. Actually, it's not great. Now, when you transform layers in Procreate, you will see that I get a much more blurred sort of effect. This is an issue in Procreate. So I wouldn't want to use this as my finished art. But it works well as a guide. So I know I want my shank to be about something like that. I take down the opacity, get myself a fresh layer. I want to bring back my drawing guide, options, horizontal, quadrant. Okay. First off, actually, I want to make this so the drawing assist is on. I need to zoom in a lot more so that I can position that carefully. Once again, setting up the view is really important in Procreate. And it really... I'm having an issue with this, getting it to do what I want it to do. There we go. And you can see, now it's because I did that again. It's really a problem if you touch this white when you're working. Don't know why I I can't see the quadrant. There it is. It's moved away. Zoom in. It can get stuck. There we go. And sometimes your fingertip works better than the pen. Okay. Thank goodness. All right, so now I'm going to work on this. I want it to come in. So I'm actually going to just more or less trace this. Now I know in real life it's connecting about here on the under bezel, but it's close enough. I know this is going to stretch out further than that. Okay? And I know that about halfway down the shank, somewhere in this area, it's this thickness. So actually it will end up being like so. I have my detail like so. I'm going to go ahead and clean up my template so I can see better. Where it's not bothering me, it's not in my way, I can leave it alone. But anywhere it's messing with me at this point, I'll take it out. Back to my drawing layer. Going to back this back down a little bit in size because I'm working on the finished drawing. Like so. So now I have that pretty well taken care of. I can turn off that guide. I will make some decisions about what I think about this. I think that taper is a little too harsh. And that's okay, because like I pointed out, it would actually not get all the way tapered until it got up under the stone a little bit. So I'm confident that I can flare that out slightly and be okay. Remember, of all the views on a ring, the one that's most important is the top. So if you don't love what you're seeing in the top view, take a minute. Sorry. So, okay, I like that better. I actually want these bumps to be a little heavier, a little thicker in the top view. Now, an argument could be made that I should have developed this in the top view before going to the side. Yeah, doesn't matter. You're going to end up going back and forth until you get a ring you like. That's the process. Okay, that's not bad. The prongs are really big, which I already knew. I'm going to go ahead and wipe them out on the template a bit. And with this quadrant symmetry on it, won't take long. And then go back to my top view layer. and get more modest prong size going. That's pretty nice. That works out. Okay. So back to assisted drawing. Sorry. Clicked a little too far to the left. My drawing guide. Now I want my symmetry to be vertical again. And it's not wanting me to zoom in and out. There we go. Thank you. I need to refine this drawing a little bit more. So I'm going to set up my symmetry drawing here. And this was on this layer. Remember I had talked about how I had made the taper of the basket too severe in the template. Okay, oops. Problem is I didn't turn on assisted. So that whole symmetry drawing thing wasn't working for me. There we go. I'm going to clean up my template a little bit because this center line is not attractive. I want to move that symmetry now over to the side. I have to make one more adjustment there. This prong is actually getting a little bit thin. At the bottom. Okay. Hit the wrench. Edit drawing guide. Move that over. I want to reflect some of what I did there in the top view. In the side view. Mainly in capturing a little wider taper. Stays fatter up towards the top, and a little beefier treatment here. Okay. Now, if I'm doing this for a client and I don't want it to look overly CAD, because whenever you use symmetry, it can become very rigid looking. I'm going to turn off the assist for a minute. And how I did this dot dash to show that it's not a hard line. I'm going to treat it differently, slightly, on each side. That way it looks more hand done. Template once again. Clean up, center line removed. That would actually be there. It's an undergird facet, but that's all right. And now I'm just really tidying up the drawing. That's enough. Now, the only thing I want to do now is I want to put the top view more in line with the front. I don't want this flattened top view in the way. I don't need it. So I'm going to select rectangle. I'm going to go to template layer, 3-finger drag, cut. We're going to do the same selection around my top view. I am going to 3-finger drag, copy all, paste. And then here's the challenge. Moving this straight up and down is difficult in Procreate on an iPad because you don't have access to your keyboard. I'm going to cheat because I actually have a keyboard cover. So I'm going to turn this upside up, and then I can use the arrow keys to move that straight down. Otherwise, I would have to set up a guide or something so that I could follow it. That's fine. Okay. Back to select. 3-finger drag, cut. Oh, it's not going to work. Come up here. 3-finger drag, cut. And then I have to take a couple steps so I can get it all the way down to the template. There. I could have also used a separate layer and done a paint bucket fill. So this design is complete. This would be the finished design for your homework. The last thing that I need to do is to make it in a manageable size canvas. This is a very large canvas and I don't need it. This is just to work from. So I'm going to drag a rectangle like so. Going to copy all. Okay. I'm going to go to my gallery, start a new one. I'll just use the typical screen size. That should be big enough. And paste. Okay. And that should give me, oops, my bad. Remember, after you paste, to hit your brush. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay. So I'm going to zoom in to make sure I didn't lose. Now see that? I lost a lot of resolution. That's unfortunate. So I've never tried to crop in Procreate before. Let's try it. They do not give me that choice. Interesting. Crop and resize. Yeah, like I say, they're all pretty much whatever you can do in one program, you can do in another. It's just finding it. Okay. There. Turned off the... And that's finished, okay? So to get this back out of here, if I want to use it in Photoshop, which we're going to be doing in class tomorrow, for example, or get it off of the iPad, although I could certainly render it and work with it in here, but for Rhino I need to go to a PC. I'm going to take this artwork, select, share, JPEG. Okay, I do not want to save the image because that'll go on my camera. I want to save to files and find the folder. Okay, I do not have, there we go. Okay, I'm going to change its name title drawing. And I'm going to put out so I know that it's on its way out of here. Hit done. Hit save. Okay. I'm through in Procreate. Going to go to my Chrome app, where I already have my Google Drive set up. Now, I have this set to use a PC interface, so it gets mad at me. I don't care. I just close that out. And JD238, it's already here. New. File upload. Browse. Find the file. And it is now in my Google Drive, which I can then access from my PC. And that is it.